And that's all we've got, is what falls in the winter. And with summers getting longer and drier, and people are starting to feel summer drought. And I'm just wondering if logging and the potential impacts of logging, as you said, over 80 years, whether that, I'm thinking that maybe we as an island need to make a water stewardship plan under the new water stewardship plan, I think is what it's called, anyway, under the new Water Act. Because we
Water Sustainability
don't,
Act.
that's it, thank you. Because we don't have a way to pipe water in, fresh water in from anywhere else, right? We're not, we can't just go back further into the mountains.
No, but
And and the effects of logging over 80 years, I don't know if anybody can project that, and let alone new wells that might be coming on as people populate some of our undeveloped land over 80 years. And what, I'm just wondering if, that's why I'm asking the question. I know the Water Stewardship Act is new, and that this idea of a water stewardship plan is new, but something holistic that we could do for Bowen Island, because we have many little watersheds, right? They're steep, they're small, and the proposed logging up at the top of them could affect many of them. And,
well, I think that's certainly a consideration, absolutely. I just remind you that with regard to the logging, you would, or to forestry, you would look at the biomass in a particular region, and then you would harvest what grows on an annual basis. So that would be the principle, so that overall the biomass wouldn't change. The actual trees would change, but the total volume wouldn't. So ideally, it shouldn't affect that sort of thing. But that's again an assessment that is worthy of consideration and further investigation. But I'd also suggest that a place, there's many communities around British Columbia that don't really have the opportunity to go off into some other drainage somewhere. In fact, one could argue that a water line to West Vancouver is easier than it is to, you know, if you're living in the Okanagan, where you've got a very dry aquifer at the best of times. You know, these are probably the drainages that have some of the more significant risk, and really do require a good plan going forward, especially with growth. And I think you rightly point out that growth can create additional demand. So all to say that, you know, I recognize Bowen is unique. I recognize islands are unique, but they're not entirely as unique as I think they are.
No, and I'm not trying to lobby you here. I'm asking because it's all sort of new, and we haven't got examples of other communities that have done these. And I have been going to the Okanagan and to different water seminars and things like that, and they've got big challenges coming with climate change. And I'm going, we are also going to experience climate change. What can we learn from that? Yes. So their changes are coming, and they're not just lack of water, it's also increased sediment in the water because the storms are bigger in the winter, and you know, there's all kinds of different changes as well that could affect the quality of our water and our ability of our new water treatment plant to handle it, all that kind of thing. So what I don't want is to not pay attention to something now that 20 years from now could be affecting our water or our wildfire risk and all those things. And I'm not sure that they're really captured now in a forest sustainability plan. It seems to be all about fiber and that kind of thing.
Well, I think
Maximizing
that's
harvest.
worth, you know, I think it's a very valid observation around the forest sector for sure.
Okay.
And the Water Sustainability Act, just to review it a little bit, I think it was introduced in 2015, I want to say, and it's been somewhat slower, 2014. It's been rolling out over the last number of years. There's been some challenges around the administration and the willingness of people to register. So it is rolling out more slowly than one would hope, but the deadlines are there. And it's a critical piece going forward, understanding where our water's coming from. There's no question about that. I mean, you know, Without water, there isn't
Just
any.
for other members of council, through the Islands Trust, we, speaking as an Islands trustee now, we have a freshwater specialist that is on contract for a couple of years, starting to work with some of the islands that are in more risk of running out of water than Bowen is, in drier ecosystems.
Right, yeah, very courteous
So we're learning,
soil.
well, various issues,
Yeah.
yeah. And so we're looking at different, some of them don't have lakes, for example.
Yeah, that's right.
And so we're looking at different ways of thinking about water sustainability on islands. And we do have some, anyway, so that's where some of these questions are coming from. Okay, I'm happy to move on if people want.
We don't have water, we're not living here.
No,
Is that subterranean also, or is it just surface water?
no, both.
Both
No,
things?
no, there's different rules for groundwater versus surface water, but they're all licensed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the
yeah.
sediment issue would be more of a surface water issue than a groundwater, because it would get filtered as it.
Yeah.
And there's a whole section which I just sent everybody from the provincial website on water planning and strategies.
Okay. Okay, moving on,
Did
rural.
it have a date there? An
What was
application date?
Oh, when the act came in?
Or no,
No,
but the
no.
application date, for.
To register your
register.
well.
Oh, for your well, I can just,
Yeah.
I'll go into the groundwater and wells section. Apply for a license, register, hang on, register your well. March 1st.
Yeah.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah, see, it's still, it
That's
hasn't
important.
changed. I think there might be,
Yeah, I think it was extended once perhaps.
Yeah.
So our rural definition and progress with Flynn Rowe. Maureen, would you want to talk to that?
Yeah. Well, we're continuing to hammer on that door, and I think we may be making some progress. As you know, we were given permission to apply in the fifth intake of the Rural Dividend Fund. Application went in, it's been under consideration for a while now. We haven't gotten any specific feedback on it, but we have a good contact person, a liaison person in Flynn Rowe who's keeping an eye on things and giving us a heads up at the appropriate times. There was correspondence that went forward to Minister Ralston and Minister Donaldson that you were copied on. Minister Ralston regarding ICE-T, Minister Donaldson regarding the Rural Dividend Fund. There's a letter that's en route to Gary regarding ICE-T from Minister Ralston, and we have a copy of it. It's ambiguous. We need to have a conversation with him to clarify a couple of points, because on closer reading it appears that he seems to think that we're eligible for something that we're not, and it doesn't quite make sense. So there's follow-up required there. We haven't heard from Minister Donaldson directly, but we were included in a research project that's being conducted by Deloitte, and Kathy and I had an interview with the researcher last Thursday. And the purpose of the research was to do an assessment of the Rural Dividend Fund. So it's part of that big rural engagement review that his ministry's doing. And she gave us a bit of background on the fund itself, including the astonishing to me information that 967 municipalities or bodies applied for Rural Dividend Fund money over those 5 intakes, so that's pretty huge. And she was looking for stories from us about what our experience had been, why we felt we should be eligible, what was the argument, and sort of recap all the arguments that we've been putting forward, and ask for some recommendations that she could take forward to the fund itself. And the 3 things that we ended up landing on, this was towards the end of the conversation, the first thing was that we gain, if the Rural Dividend Fund continues, that we gain permanent eligibility for applying to the fund. And that the most elegant way, if they're trying to figure out how to work Bowen in there, the most elegant way to do it is that recommendation that came from Islands Trust to deem all of the islands in the trust eligible by virtue of their islandness. And then the second point was for them to attempt to create a more level playing field, so that situations such as Salt Spring, part of Capital Regional District, San Juan, where they're eligible, and then we're part of Metro and we're not eligible. So there's a structural inequity there. And the bit that we focused on there was some feedback from the Greg Moore letter, where the argument from Metro staff was that the use of regional district boundaries was too coarse a tool to use for the purposes of determining eligibility. And then the third point just had to do with sort of managing the process, and that the intakes have sort of been here and there, and they pop up, and there's no regular rhythm to them. So the notion of there being sort of standardized intake periods where, in particular, staff are able to budget for time and know when they have to get it in, rather than it popping up and there being a bit of a scramble. Because the first time we got the exemption, it was a terrible scramble. The second time we got the exemption, it was more orderly, but it was still 6 weeks that was driven largely by council at that point. So there wasn't a lot of opportunity for staff to take it and go forward with it and develop the in-house expertise of dealing with rural dividend fund applications. And given the amount of money that could potentially be available for us, it would be good for us to have that opportunity to plan and put in the best application we can. So we are expecting to hear from Minister Donaldson at some point. We don't know whether we'll be able to see a copy of the Deloitte report when it's done. They weren't sure, and it may be that they'll have some clarity around that once the ministers received it and decided whether they want to make it a public document. Is there anything you wanted to add?
No, I think you covered it off well. I mean, my main point in that conversation was staff resources and knowing in advance we can plan it as part of our work plan to build that in. I think she was a little uncomfortable when we asked about if the report could be shared, but
Yeah, it was a little bit
it's
of
worth
a shock.
asking.
The report, and this is, was requested, or an RFP went out from Flinro for a review of.
It must have.
Yeah,
It
yeah,
is.
we just know that they hired
Yeah.
Deloitte to do it, undertake it.
We knew they were gonna probably do a review, so obviously they've hired Deloitte to do it. And we've got your, thank you for your letter
Yeah.
of support.
Thank you very much for that.
That was very helpful to get that kind of support all around.
And we did get a response, I don't know if you were CC'd on a response from Minister Donaldson to me about the letter. And he gave the impression in the letter that the decision was gonna be made prior to Christmas. So
Yeah, no, I think it's after that. I don't think we've seen that.
We're hearing
Yeah,
in
it's
the year.
pulled up. Oh, I asked that question as well, because the original correspondence Deloitte sent out seemed to be working under the assumption that the communities already knew, and we hadn't received anything, so, and she said, no, none of the communities, but she didn't have a timeline for when it was
didn't
gonna.
it
It
imply, Sharon, that,
Sorry?
didn't it imply in the response?
Yeah, I'm just trying to pull it up.
It says in this letter that is addressed to, it's dated December 21st, to Sav Dalawala, Metro Vancouver. It says, I can confirm that a review of the program is currently underway by Flinro, including consideration of eligibility requirements, which will be completed early 2019.
Okay.
But with the grant itself, we haven't heard anything.
Yeah, no, that was what I was
Yeah.
curious about.
Oh, okay.
The letter implied
Yeah.
that the grant announced.
And from what I understood, none of the communities have been notified yet.
Oh, I see, okay.
Probably gonna be coincidental.
Oh, for the rural
Some
dividend
funds.
program? Oh, yes. I saw something in the news review.
What you probably saw in the news release was there were, if my memory is serving correctly, there were a number of sort of emergency funding.
Fast-tracked ones.
The fast-track ones, situations where there was some infrastructure issue that needed to be dealt with. So there were a couple of announcements that came out over the last couple of months, but the big announcements where they sort of roll them out one day after the other, those have not
Yeah,
happened.
she was very clear about that.
Well, we'll certainly keep an eye out for that Deloitte report. It'll eventually become public.
It was just that's how it usually happens? Yeah,
Sit on it for so long, but
Yeah.
eventually.
okay.
I don't think there's much we can do about it at this point, but wait.
They
No,
get
but it'd be
information
interesting
that
to
we
see what
don't
they
have.
report out.
Yeah.
and-
Oh, absolutely, yeah, yeah, for
I
sure.
know other communities are interested as well. Has been Clifton, Lions Bay.
The Metro Vancouver communities and
Yeah.
Capital Regional
Bell-
District communities as well.
Belcarra, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And more.
And more.
Yeah, and the city of Langley too as well, because it's communities under 25,000, so I can't remember if it's township of Langley is
Township.
also.
Township. Yeah, hard to imagine the cities rural.
Yeah,
No
I know.
problem.
Yeah, Duncan, all kinds of cities get access to these funds,
Well,
but
Pemberton
Wow.
and Gibson's does,
Yeah.
and Squamish does.
Yeah, well, the criteria is communities under 25,000.
Yeah,
Mm.
but then it's
But outside
federal
of
infrastructure grant,
metro,
it's
but
communities under
not,
30.
not inclusive of the
Metro.
CRD.
That's correct.
CRD and Metro are left out.
Oh, but Salt Spring's part of
But
CRD,
yeah,
so
but they
Yeah.
have a big lobby.
Exemption.
they got an exemption.
Salt Spring and Waterford electoral area got an
Right.
exemption.
And that's part of the inequity that Maureen was
Yeah.
speaking to.
Yeah,
yeah.
but like Highlands and some of those other communities are eligible for CRD.
The Deloitte researcher was quite interested in why that inequity existed, so we speculated.
Well, that's a good point.
You don't care to speculate publicly.
What about ICE, is that, where's it?
He was very clear in that letter that Sue Ellen forwarded to Balance Trust that ICE wasn't going to be changed because. of
Ice-T is this
Ice-T, yeah.
something
Yeah.
coastal
Island
economic
Island
trust.
Coastal Economic Trust,
Yeah, even though it's got the word island in it, island coastal, yeah. It's more about, I understand it's more about,
Preservation?
no,
No.
it's more about
Economic development.
economic
Oh,
development, but for towns that were based on logging and the mill shuts down.
Oh, yeah,
Or
okay.
there's no more logging anymore, and they're shipping all the raw logs or something. And, or the mill shuts down. And so towns that have one major industry, and especially Vancouver. So
Want some help? Yeah.
that's, however, I think we should continue trying to be part of that, or keep our investigations going.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because I believe Salt Spring is trying hard to be part of that as well, and so, again, there's that equity issue, and we need something to help us stay rural, which
Yeah,
is what
exactly.
the regional growth strategy says, which is the outcome of what used to be those green zones. Yeah,
We're supposed to be
and,
rural.
yeah,
Yeah.
and if we wanna stay rural, we need some help, so
Yes.
we need some funding.
Although if that's a metro plan, then maybe Metro should be contributing.
Well,
But we're not part
That's
of
a
the
good
Metro,
idea.
but we're not part of the Metro Regional Growth Strategy, so, yeah.
But if
Part
you
of our-
designate
Wait.
it through
yeah.
What, they
Metro plan.
designate us,
We
yes,
try that, and
Yeah.
we'll keep trying that.
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, no, and I think you're right. Ice-T was sort of north of here,
Yeah.
and it was around the decline of forestry and fishing in coastal communities. I think that the province, my recollection was that it was about $50 million originally, and the idea was to, the decision of the trust board was to essentially spend that money, as opposed to other trusts which use it as an annuity and continue to invest, but they felt it was important to do projects up and down the coast, which they have done. And as of a year ago, I don't think there was very much money left in the fund. And then the question was, would we renew it? Would it be reinvigorated? And would the terms of reference change at all?
Yeah, so it'll be interesting, but anyway, we're following.
Yeah.
But not all of Vancouver Island's included in
No,
ICE,
no.
southern portion.
Right.
Just in terms of next steps, and I'll forward this to Sharon. There's the letter that went to South Ottawa that Sue Ellen brought to our attention. It mentions that the review of the program is currently underway, so that's the Deloitte research, or partly the Deloitte research, including consideration of eligibility requirements. It will be completed in early 2019 and will help ensure that the rural dividend program continues to meet the needs of rural stakeholders. So there's a parcel of potential legislative changes as well that is going to come forward in the spring, and I don't know very much about it, but
Well,
it's mentioned.
Yeah.
And it's all related to the ruralness issue.
Mhm. Well, that rural definition, as we know, for a variety of different, access to a variety of different initiatives is important. And I think we made that point with the minister around what is a rural community, and for what purpose, be it for health, or be it for, for forestry, for
Accessibility.
infrastructure, for
Yeah.
a variety of different initiatives that all have different designations, like, with the Bowen being rural, from a healthcare perspective, well, from some aspects of a healthcare perspective anyway, we had access to that rural paramedic program.
Right, right.
Yeah,
But whereas
like
the
a
library-
doctor
Yeah,
And stuff like
yeah,
that.
exactly, but then in other cases, you're not.
Yeah.
That's right.
The
For
other side
example,
of it, I
for-
guess, yeah.
For example, for our library, we could benefit from, obviously it take costs more to transfer books back and forth and all this kind of thing, but there's no funding for that because we're considered urban.
Part of metro.
Through the
Part of-
Library Act,
Yeah.
yeah. Anyway,
That was a new one too, a lot of us, we didn't realize we were getting a different library contribution because we were considered rural.
Mhm.
So that's another one to add to the list
Mhm.
of where it's impacted.
No,
it's on the list.
again, we'll wait that one out, I guess. So the BC Ferries terminal upgrade, who's, David?
Sure, yeah, thanks, Gary. So I was, before this role, the chair of our local transportation advisory committee, so met with BC Ferries quite a bit, and we were generally pleased with the work that they've been doing, consulting with us about the upgrade to that terminal, and it's an astonishingly difficult job. They're trying to look forward 50 years, and so we've been stressing, and they've been listening, and that transportation is going to change enormously over the next 50 years with, all kinds of technologies around autonomous vehicles, or who knows what, and shared vehicles and so on. And the point that we're been trying to make with them is they should consider that facility not a terminal, not the end of something, but a hub in the middle of something. And for us on Bowen, we're very much transportation challenged, because the ferry was enlarged, as you remember, over 5-6 years ago. It's at its capacity again, and for a while, suddenly you could just sort of drive on.
Yeah.
And now, of course, you've got overloads once again. But the tricky part is we also ended up having overloads on passengers. And so they've managed to address that. BC Ferries has managed to address that by changing some of the designations around how many staff you need and emergency services and stuff like that, which has been great.
Getting
But
permission from Transport
Well, that's Transport Canada.
Transport
Yeah,
Canada, they
we
applied
managed
to Transport
work
Canada.
with Transport Canada.
But the trouble is, that just gets for our school, kids that are going to high school, that just gets us to the limit. So
Yeah, right
it's,
there at the limit, yeah.
we're going to be in trouble again over the years. So we need to make sure that the facilities we get to work with BC Ferries, we're thinking foot passenger. We know that Horseshoe Bay is actually the most crowded terminal they have. There are more boats going in and out of there than even big terminals like Blossom. So we see foot passenger service being important for us in the future to take those overloads. But that requires really good transportation at this end and really good transportation at the other end, and both of those need upgrading. So the whole transportation issue is a tricky one for us. It's an integrated problem. But working the way that Horseshoe Bay redevelops it over the next few years is really going to be quite critical. So we're happy with the progress we've been making working with them, but they are coming out with, I believe it's this March, I'm not sure exactly when, they'll have a sort of a plan that can be proposed, and we'll sort of see what we see at that time. We're also we're in their plans to have an upgrade of our terminal that we have down here in a few years as well. And we're happy to work on that.
Have we actually got a date on that, Dave?
They moved it along a little bit. I think it's 21, but it was going to be earlier, and it kind of got bumped, so we'll see.
Hey, at least we're on the list for a
We're on-
change.
We're
Yes.
on the list.
Yeah.
Never-ending list.
Yeah.
Well, that's a good thing.
Yeah.
And also, we've been talking up the idea of
Go for it.
electric ferry,
Yeah.
going back and forth, and recently Mark Collins, and in the current issue of the Undercurrent, he's written there's a whole big, page-long article telling us why that's not feasible, but
Yeah.
yet, right, 20 years from now or something, he said it might be, but the idea of the new BC Clean Energy Act, and that's all about actions for climate mitigation, and also increasing jobs and all those kinds of things. I just, I'm hoping and wondering whether you've got ideas for how BC Ferries might be included or encouraged to do, to fast track some of the climate actions that need to happen. Because that's, for Bowen Island, that's a huge, the ferry is a huge 25% or whatever of our greenhouse gas emissions. And we have a track record in the island of responding to changes in transportation in a positive way when it comes to new buses or new ways of getting around. And do you have any suggestions for how we could advocate for an electric ferry as a way to?
And I want to add a little bit to what both of us look like we do.
Yeah.
So I spoke with MLA about this yesterday. But if you look
You
at
spoke to who, sorry?
one of our MLAs.
Oh, right.
Yeah. If you look at our climate plan and say we're after 2040, is it 2040? No more cars sold that are gasoline cars. We need to be carbon neutral by about 2040. BC Ferries right now is making decisions about building new ships. Ships that last 20, 30, 40, 50 years. So 50 years, and they're designing and having designed and built ships that will require fuel. And so, you know, that just simply seems that they are not aligning with the province's climate change plan. Alison's going to disagree with me, but that's my real concern. Why do we have a provincial climate change plan, and there doesn't seem to be any requirement for BC Ferries to support it or live within it?
That's right, who did that come from?
Which
Oh, no, that came from me, but I
Oh.
spoke
was
with,
talking to.
MLA Spencer Tracy,
Spencer
who was at the meeting
Who's
yesterday.
Spencer Herbert.
Spencer.
Spencer Herbert.
What new ferries are you referring to?
The ones that Mark Collins mentioned in his plan, in his column.
Oh, was that? Are we talking?
Oh,
well,
Spencer Tracy
I thought he was
talked
only
to-
talking about the fact that they converted the Spirit classes to LNG.
No, he was talking about
And the new
capital
little,
projects.
the new little ferries that are being built for all the islands, if you read the report from the commissioner, if you read the press releases the BC Ferries are being built dual fuel. So they can be converted to solely running on electric power. But right now, there is no way to charge those ferries in Bella Coola and all that stuff. So they've got to replace those old ferries. So they're being built so that they can run on dual fuel. They will be, and I was told this by the ferry commissioner as well, able to run entirely on electricity once the shoreside infrastructure is there to enable them to charge them.
Well, it's a shoreside infrastructure, but it's also
And,
the batteries.
yeah,
So right now, like the new ferries that are gonna go, I think Lasqueti, Powell River,
yeah,
and I think there's 3 new ferries that are being constructed right now, and they are, it's not necessarily dual fuel, it's a hybrid electric,
yeah.
so that it has the batteries, and it will run on batteries for the most part, but then it will also run on,
Yeah.
LNG, I think, so, but
Well, that's what
there's
I
the
meant by
capacity in it to,
Sure.
once the batteries are at a sufficient, I should say there's space, so that it could be converted to completely electric on these new smaller ferries. Now, whether that's true for the bigger ones, the next one, the Spirit class replacements are going out for, I think there are requests for expressions of interest right now, as opposed to an RFP, so that they're a number of years out before they're going to be ordered. But the ones that are under construction right now will be able to be converted to completely electric, at least the small ones. And then I think there's 2 ways of approaching just the operational side, from what I understand. You can either operate, it makes more sense efficiently, in terms of efficiency, to operate, I think, on power in, I can't remember now, it's one way or the other, but either run on internal combustion when you're docking, because you have a little more control, and then, or maybe it's the other way
It
around.
would be electricity when you're docked, presumably, just like in BC.
No, getting into the.
But it was more getting in and
Maneuverability.
maneuverability, but also, and then also what is the noise profile and emission profile like in port. So there's anyway, suffice to say, I think that there's certainly paying attention to that. Now, that said, at the end of the day, the corporation has to make economic decisions, and in order to, if there's gonna be economic decisions that have cost implications to users, then somebody has to come up with the money for it. So either the province has to increase the provincial contribution, or fares go up, or some other capital cost doesn't take place. So, but I'd encourage, so to Sue Ellen, I guess I just encourage you to continue to lobby, and I have made the same pitch, because it always struck me that Bowen was a prime candidate for clean energy ferry.
The problem is, we don't have an old ferry, and the new ones they're building, ours is too big to go and service.
Well, there's lots of problems, but the
Yeah.
point is, you know, that we need to be making big changes, and we need to making visible changes in it. And I appreciate that you're thinking about this too, and if there's just to continue on lobbying side of it is,
Have you
That's helpful.
written written to
You put in
Mr.
our-
Collins to say, you know, here's what we advocate for
We-
for the Horseshoe Bay Snug Cove route?
right now, it's just been happening sort of through the newspapers and stuff, but we
Well,
can
we do
certainly
have-
do right.
and we
We
put it on
can,
people who are writing-
if it turns into one of our strategic.
Rebuttals to what we saw in the paper the other day. We've got some people doing that right now.
Yeah.
And we did raise it with Ministry.
Well, I'd write a letter to Mr. Collins and the Minister of Transport and advocate for a clean energy ferry and look forward to a response. And then you know, create that formal dialogue about why it may or may not work.
We had also, at our last council meeting, this was discussed, and there was a suggestion that we simply ask Mark Collins to come and visit again. He did during our last term, and
Yeah.
it would be good to hear firsthand.
I think he was here just 2 weeks ago or a month ago or something, wasn't he?
From Sea Shelter.
Over in, no, he was over in Glen Eagles.
Mhm. Yeah.
Well, it may have been
He's
in
certainly
here.
accessible. I think inviting him is a good idea.
Yeah, we know he's accessible,
Good.
he's a good guy to talk to.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
And while we're on transportation, we were also talking about a fast ferry, and we put it forward to TransLink and BC Ferries.
A
I
ferry,
think.
passenger only
Passenger
ferry into
only
the
ferry,
Seacoast
fast ferry.
terminal.
Down in Vancouver, because there's always been talk about, you know, coming in and Squamish and stuff, and then you're going downtown, or coming in.
So can we ask Jordan to tell us a little bit about the Sea to Sky transportation study?
In terms of transit?
Yeah, I mean, was there any traction that came out of that, or some sort of a water passenger, water
No.
vehicle?
What we had hoped to do was that there, because originally back in there, 2002 or something, there was an assessment of looking at a ferry service. I don't know that they
And
like
then-
that term fast ferry, but some other
Passenger
type
ferry.
of passenger-oriented ferry to service Squamish from the Sky, as well as looking at the train. That was another piece
Yeah.
to look at, but ultimately the decision was made to upgrade the highway to deal with goods movement and a variety of other issues. But an initial assessment was done on the ferry. I had tried to put some partners together around Squamish, around the regional district, potentially, you know, Bowen, to look at taking that study and revisiting it and seeing whether it made sense to review it, and maybe the technologies have changed, operational costs have changed, volumes have changed, hard to say. So, but I didn't get any traction from the various partners to bring to.
Make it happen.
Yeah. Now, I'd be certainly happy to try and do that again and to reinvigorate that conversation. And, you know, Bowen could help by,
Sure.
you know,
Well,
by,
we've written to TransLink asking them to react.
for translate.
Yeah, because it was in the North Shore Transportation Review that Minister or Secretary, whatever her title is, Bowen Law. And so we asked that they reactivate that, and we really haven't. But that
I thought there was a response and said they wouldn't be looking at it for a
I
year
can't,
and
I
a
don't
half or
remember
2
seeing
years
the
or something like
response.
Yes, that's correct.
Yeah.
It was until the next
Yeah, review.
Well, review
Detailed
the
review.
North Shore Transit Plan or whatever.
Well, I don't know that this is really a North Shore Transit Plan issue. I guess
Because
I
we're
would.
beyond.
Well, but originally.
So
they
my,
were-
what I had
Well,
thought was that we
here
would
to
approach the
14th and
Ministry
then-
of Transportation
Yeah.
and Infrastructure their review originally, that we would pull out, dust
Yeah.
off, have another look at. And then, if we could bring Squamish and the regional district potentially, the SLRD, I should say, not Metro, and Bowen, and potentially Gibson's,
Yeah,
into
absolutely.
this conversation, and then review the technology, review the original report, and see if things have changed, and I
Under,
thought,
under the Clean Energy Act, or
Sure.
the plan, you know,
Yeah, use
there
all
have been
those.
some changes.
well, and so bringing, if we could bring a number of partners together, and that, the province would be, say, 25% or 30% of that, assessment, then, that was what I was hoping to get some traction.
Yeah.
Okay, sounds good.
So in the review of the Sea to Sky Transportation, was there a part that was, how do we get people from Squamish down to Vancouver that work in Vancouver?
Well,
Was there an identification of numbers of bodies that actually commute?
Yes, yes,
So
part of
we've
the
got
assessment.
some data.
Yes, there's a Sea to Sky Transit Futures Plan
Yeah, that's what I'm
that
talking
was
about.
published, I think, a year and a half ago or so,
Oh, I thought it
or
was,
2 years ago.
oh, sooner than that.
Yeah, well, now, what's happening right now is a discussion about what regional transit looks like to serve the Sea to Sky and how it connects with Metro.
Okay, but so is it doing that middle bit in the middle about how they're
Yes.
gonna connect? Okay,
Yes.
so,
And because that's clearly there are times when the Sea to Sky Highway is near capacity.
yeah.
And so, the question is, how do we steward that capacity? How do we ensure that we retain it? And that means some sort of public sector or public transit system that needs to be in place to get from Mount Currie in the north part of the region through into Vancouver. Because also Squamish is a administrative center for the
Yeah.
region. And if you're going to the hospital,